Welcome to today's Explainer. We're officially trading the calm waters of Yichang for a landscape that honestly looks like it was ripped straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster. Today, we're ascending the real-life avatar mountains of Zhangjiajie. We're going to dive deep into the mind-bending geology, some seriously record-breaking engineering, and the incredibly rich cultural heritage that's hidden up there in the mist.
You know, there's a saying about this place. These mountains were so extraordinary that filmmakers had to invent another planet to explain them. And when you look at these mist-shrouded peaks, you probably immediately think of Pandora from James Cameron's movie Avatar. And you'd absolutely hit the nail on the head, because this specific region directly inspired the Hallelujah Mountains in that film. But here's the craziest part. This isn't CGI. It's not some Hollywood backlot. This breathtaking landscape is entirely 100% real, and honestly, it's even more spectacular when you realize it exists right here on our own planet.
So how exactly do we get up into a world that literally looks like it's floating in the sky? Well, the process is surprisingly futuristic. You don't just hand over a crumpled paper ticket. Instead, a seamless facial recognition scan clears you right into the national park. From there, you step into the massive Beilong elevator, and mere moments later, you step out directly into the clouds. It's this wild juxtaposition, right? You have this ancient, pristine natural wonder, but you're accessing it using some of the most cutting-edge, high-tech infrastructure on Earth. And speaking of that elevator, get this, 326 meters. That is the staggering vertical climb of the Beilong elevator, straight up a sheer cliff face. It actually holds the Guinness World Record for the tallest outdoor elevator in the world. I mean, just picture it. You walk up to a massive sandstone cliff, and bolted right onto the side of it are 3 double-decker glass elevators. It's a total marvel of modern human engineering, just plunked right smack in the middle of a geological wonder.
But it's not just how high it goes, it's how fast it gets you there. 88 seconds. That is all it takes for these glass elevators to launch you from the forest floor all the way to the summit. Visitors describe being packed in, the doors sliding shut, and then suddenly you are just rocketing upwards. 1 second you're standing in dense woods, and a minute and a half later you're standing amongst the peaks. It is a wildly efficient and, frankly, thrilling way to ascend into the heavens.
All right, so you step out of the elevator and boom, you are greeted by a surreal stone forest. We're talking about over 3,000 towering quartzite sandstone pillars scattered across the park. These are totally unique, freestanding rock columns formed by millions of years of natural weathering. Basically, wind, rain, and time carved away the softer rock, leaving only these mind-bending, gravity-defying spires behind. The most famous ones are in the Yuanjiajie area. And when the fog rolls in, which it does a lot, the bases of these pillars completely disappear, making them look exactly like they're just floating in mid-air.
As we navigate through this crazy landscape, we hit incredible natural formations, like the first bridge in the world. Now, this isn't some man-made suspension bridge. It's a completely natural stone arch, roughly 20 meters long, just connecting 2 of these massive peaks together. But what makes it so terrifying and awe-inspiring is that it's suspended a staggering 400 meters in the air. Below it, just a sheer mist-filled drop. Visitors who walk this path actually hang these bright red ribbons along the railings to make wishes, which adds this really beautiful, deeply human touch of color to the dizzying heights of the stone forest.
Now, from a natural bridge to a totally extreme feat of human engineering. The Zhangjiajie glass bridge spans an unbelievable 430 meters right across the Grand Canyon. Opened back in 2016, this transparent walkway is so pristine that visitors actually have to wear special shoe covers to protect the glass as they cross. And yes, it lets you look straight down through the floor to the very bottom of the gorge. It's a prime example of how this region is just constantly pushing the boundaries of how we experience extreme heights.
And this creates a really fascinating contrast. On one hand, you've got the adrenaline-pumping thrill of being suspended 300 meters high, surrounded by crowds of people snapping photos. But if you head down to the valley floor, you can walk the quiet, lush 4-kilometer gorge right below it. Down there in the Grand Canyon, visitors report a profoundly peaceful experience. You're walking along these nice wooden paths next to beautiful turquoise waters, cascading waterfalls, and untouched greenery. It's a completely different, much more grounded way to experience the exact same geological feature. And I think it really highlights why finding a balance in how we explore nature is so crucial.
But hey, the national park isn't the only massive attraction here. If we shift our journey over to Tianzi Mountain, it requires a massive 7.5-kilometer cable car ride just to reach the top. We're not talking about a quick little ski lift here. This ride takes a full 28 minutes.
It sweeps you right out of the urban center, glides over the city outskirts, and ascends directly into the clouds to a height of over 1,500 meters.
And once you finally reach the top of Tianzi Mountain, the engineering somehow gets even more intense. The Guiguo Walkway and the Western Glass Bottom Path sit 1,400 meters above the ground. And these aren't just paths sitting safely on top of a mountain plateau. No, these are transparent walkways literally bolted into the side of sheer vertical cliffs. You are walking along the outside edge of the mountain with absolutely nothing but a massive drop right beneath your feet. It is terrifying for sure, but also a profoundly beautiful way to take in the sheer vastness of the region.
So after you've braved those cliff edges, how on earth do you get down? Well, the descent is honestly just as surreal as the climb. After finishing that harrowing cliffside path, you literally ride 7 massive, incredibly long escalators that are built entirely inside the solid rock of the mountain. Think about that. You're riding escalators right through the very core of the peak. Finally, you step out and stand before Tianmen Cave, widely known as Heaven's Gate. It's a colossal natural karst cave, essentially a 131.5-meter-high hole blasted right through the mountain by nature itself.
And for the grand finale of this descent, you have to brave 999 steep, dizzying steps down from the base of Heaven's Gate to the main square where the buses wait. It is a seriously intense staircase. In fact, many visitors actually stop to pray for a safe and healthy life before making the climb up or down. It's dramatic, it's physically exhausting, and it is a totally unforgettable way to cap off the Tianmen Mountain experience.
All right, after spending all that time up in the clouds, walking on glass bridges, and clinging to cliff faces, it's time to literally and figuratively ground our epic journey. We're going to do that by exploring the 2,000-year-old Furong ancient town.
What makes Furong so incredibly special is the rich cultural heritage of the Tuzha minority. This town has over 2 millennia of history, and the way its daily life blends with the dramatic landscape is just stunning. Its most famous feature is this spectacular waterfall that runs right through the middle of the town. At night, it's beautifully illuminated, giving the whole place this total fairy tale vibe. The architecture is defined by Diaojiolo, these traditional wooden stilt houses perched precariously over the water and the cliffs. And the culture is so vibrant. The local cuisine is famously sour and spicy, relying heavily on deeply flavorful smoked cured meats. You'll also find local artisans there, including some amazing elderly women who are still creating traditional hand-woven fabrics the old-fashioned way.
To really grasp local life here, you have to understand their deep, deep connection to this tough terrain. There's a great local saying, "You find those foods strange, but they are mountain delicacies." They forage for incredibly hard-to-find river ingredients, things like specific types of crabs and water bugs. Getting these requires hours of digging in the rivers just to gather a tiny amount, so they're considered incredibly precious delicacies. It really shows a resourceful, intimate connection to the land that contrasts pretty sharply with the massive tourist infrastructure up on the peaks.
So, after taking all of this in, we're left with a pretty massive, provocative question. Does massive human engineering enhance our connection to pristine natural wonders, or does it detract from it? Think about it. You have 3,000-year-old untouched quartzite pillars and a 2,000-year-old ancient culture. But to actually see those pillars, you're scanning your face, riding a 326-meter outdoor elevator, walking on glass bridges, and taking escalators inside a mountain. Does this futuristic infrastructure make these awe-inspiring places beautifully accessible to everyone, or does it kind of turn a wild landscape into a theme park? It's a fascinating tension, and it really defines the modern Zhangjiajie experience. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope it leaves you with something to really chew on. See you next time.